success, I think. Right, I had to bore this out a bit, to be honest. That hole, it was quite difficult because it's toughened, but basically it's sitting in there okay. It's a little bit, you know, if you bring in a slight bit more movement than what you'd normally get, but there's still quite a bit of movement on the original. And to be honest, I think that's just off that inner sleeve I mentioned before. And you know, once it's engaged here, there's no movement, it's solid as rock. So I'm hoping that that's solved it, and I'm hoping that that's going to do it. And see that it can act as a, try and do it like this, might be a bit easier. Acts as a, so you can see how it's, let's try and turn that. It's engaging there, look. That's how the nail will work. So I'd call that a bit of a success, but the only way of proving that it is a success is on the bike. Now, there was 0.1, so hang on, let's see, so if you think of a millimetre and then divide it by 10, so one of those 10th difference in diameter between the two HSA 269 and HSA 345, so you need to get a bit of material out. Now you can use a kind of finisher with knives on a drill, which is probably the best way, and get it absolutely correct. However, I used a bit of brute force using a 12mm drill, which is slightly over, but it seemed to have done the trick. I'm not sure if it'll be too much, but we're only talking like 1/10 of a millimetre, so hey, I think that's alright, but basically that's what I use. Big bloody thing. I wouldn't recommend that, by the way. I'd get something like a proper finishing tool with knives on a drill and just get it bored out to what you want, but it's perfectly doable, I think. So fingers crossed this will all work. So just a bit of a recap of parts for the hub specifically that you're going to need. So there's your 3-speed toggle. You'll need a 3-speed axle key, I think they're called, on the clutch. That's not the 3-speed, by the way, still need to get that. You need an new axle nut on the left hand side, because this one does not work as an axle nut. Basically it's just there threaded on purely for the function of being a bell crank. So yeah, that's all together. I've got all my bits down there. I've had a quick look at the clutch, little bit of wear, it's not bad. I've ordered a new one, but basically I've ordered a new one of them, and I've ordered a new axle key, which is about £1.80, because why pull apart a perfectly good 3-speed hub just to get that? I'll just buy one, do the rest later. So price wise, that's about, I think I only paid about £4. That's £1.80. That was about £1 for the axle nut, and this was the most expensive, and they're quite rare. I paid £43 for that, but find another for that price. There is another option. You can use the Shimano bell crank, and what you do, see it's threaded here for the end of the axle. You can tab it out the same here, and it'll work in exactly the same way, and they're cheaper. So you probably get one of them for maybe it's £25 if you want to go that route. I think there is some other routes using a chain and whatnot, but I am familiar with that. So a bit of trial and error. There's the old part. You can see the ramps on there. That's another spare I've got actually of the new part. Just in case the other one doesn't work, I'll finish that out properly inside and fit that one instead. But altogether pretty good. Now the reason I wanted to get 5 gears I haven't really spoke about. My Moulton Series 1 4-speed with a 14 tooth cog. Fine, it's absolutely fine, but I do find when I'm cycling in the Chilterns that the low gear is a bit high, and I do find that the high gear can be a bit low, so it just runs out of range. So the range I've got with a 14 tooth is 40 inch up to 76 inch. Putting the 5th gear on, what I'll be doing is putting a 15 tooth cog on the back instead of the 14 tooth. What I'll get is a 37 inch bottom gear, and then the top gear will be 83. Now if that's still not good enough for the hills, what I'll do is I'll put a 16 tooth cog on, and which will bring it down to, I think it's about 34, which is similar to my Brompton, which is fine. And the top end would still be, I think it would be about 78, 79. So that's the other option, but that's why I wanted to get 5 gears instead of 4. Just gives you more flexibility and more range. And I always think you don't really need more than 5 gears on most bikes, unless you're mountain biking, unless you're on a road bike, you know, grinding up the Stelvio Pass or something like that. You just don't need all the gears. 5's enough for most bikes, on most terrains, unless you're on really steep stuff. But there you go, that's that. So I'm going to leave it for now, and I'm going to basically put all that to one side, wait for my clutch axle, wait for my new clutch, and wait for my new fulcrum clip. I'll fit it all back together, swap it out with my bike there, with the internals in that one, fit all the cables and see how we get on. But that'll be for next weekend, or maybe the weekend after that, we'll see.